Hello and welcome to Six Figure Authors, the show that helps you take your writing career to the next level. I'm Lindsay Baroker and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Joe Lalo.
And I'm Andrea Pearson.
And we've been talking a lot about selling on Amazon lately, as Amazon is very popular and everybody wants to know how to score on Amazon. But today we're going to be talking about the other bookstores, things you can do to kind of work those book launches and promos to be more effective in stores like Google Play, Kobo, briefly Barnes & Noble. We don't have as many notes on them, and a couple more that's down in our notes. But we are going to, do this whether this is improve sales as a wide or non-exclusive author who doesn't have the advantage of also being in Kindle Unlimited or the KDP Select promo opportunities. So this should work kind of across the board in all the stores. Should help on Amazon too, a lot of this stuff. But yeah, a lot of people want to know how people who are not wishing to be exclusive want to know how to sell more books on the other stores. So with luck, we might one day find a guest for you that's actually, every now and then I hear of somebody doing like 40,000 a month on Apple. I'm not doing quite that well, but I do make six figures on the other stores. When you take away Amazon, I'm still there on the other stores. So, and Joe and Andrea have lots of good tips too. So before we jump into that, do you guys have any news or points of interest that you would like to share for the listeners?
Sure. Right now, news-wise, I spent the last couple of weeks, I was just saying before we started recording that I'm going to be away next week, although you're not going to miss an episode because we're planning. But I am trying to put off starting the writing of Big Sigma 6, which will be the final book 6 of the year, because I don't want to have a 1 week gap where I start writing and don't. So this week has been little stuff. I've been rereading things. I added a bunch of short stories to my Patreon pipeline so that I no longer have to worry about that for the next couple of months. Free Range 6 is waiting for its edit. I have it scheduled, I think, the middle of next month, so there's still some more beta reading time, but that's pretty much pending word from my illustrator for a cover. I'm probably going to be setting up a pre-order date for it soon, and it will be certainly before the end of the summer. It will probably be releasing in August or like beginning or end of August. Big Sigma 6 is fully plotted, and it's a doozy. I hope I can get it under the 150,000 words or so. I'm shooting for 100. So 150,000 should be comfortably beyond my usual overshot. And also, since we're talking about points of interest, I mentioned this earlier too. When we were talking to David Gogren, we talked about sometimes you have difficulty finding out what categories your books are in, and he gave some options that you can use to determine that. It turns out if you have Publisher Rocket, formerly KDP Rocket, then the next update is going to include categories. So that's a nice little bonus for folks that already are using that tool, like me. That's it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love Publisher Rocket, so I was excited about that. So I'm deep in edits for Sableheart. It's book 5 in my Midnight Chronicles series, and it's been so much fun to get back in. It's kind of like, I don't know, being around a best friend that you haven't seen in a long time. It's just that feeling like I'm creating again, and I really, really missed working on books. And I wanted to give an update on MailChimp just quickly. For those of you who have been kind of following, I know a couple people have been thinking about switching and they wanted to see how things go with me long-term for them. Something that I've found that I really like about them is they have a section where in your emails you can pin, basically. It's like a click and drag system. You say, I want to create this section, and I want to save it for future use. And then when you change that in any other place, it'll change it all the way across the board. And so this is really great for, like, if you have I have a spot on all my emails that says, if you'd like to subscribe, click here. Alternatively, you can follow me on BookBub and on Amazon. And I don't change that very often, but when I do, I don't want to have to go and track that down in every single automation email and every single template and everything. So if you change that in one spot, it updates it everywhere. You can make it so it doesn't, but and then it's also really good if you have footers. Like I keep my book covers in my footers. And then, so if you ever change a book cover or if you ever change something with that, then you just change it in one spot and it changes it everywhere. And so for those of you who use automation sequences, and I typically have probably 5 or 6 sometimes going. If I'm in full blown author marketing, not paying attention to my kids, paying attention to my kids, but not having health problems with my kids, I'll usually have around 8 going at once. And so having that change in every single automation email and every single automation sequence is really, really nice. So yeah, so that's something I've been finding that I really like about it. And that's pretty much it for me.
That definitely sounds useful, even just with the welcome, the automatic welcome email. Like I have on my sci-fi list, I list the books at the bottom because the sci-fi isn't so extensive. I'm like, hey, and if you want to check out my other books, here's this. And I realized like last month I went in, I was like, oh, it's been a long time since I've updated that list. So I went in and tweaked it. But yeah, if you were someone that had that at the bottom of every, if you send out an auto responder with, or a sequence of like 8 emails or something with your books listed, it might be nice to change that all in one place. All right, so I just grabbed, there was Written Word Media did a survey of their subscribers a few weeks ago, and it was called How Readers Pick What to Read Next. And I'll share the link to the survey in the show notes if you want to check it out. It is probably nothing too surprising, but I just grabbed a couple tidbits to share. One of the things that the reader said was the book's description and book cover are the most important factors for readers when deciding on a purchase. The order was book description 1, cover 2, reviews 3. I actually thought it would be cover first, to be honest. I feel like that I've sold a lot of books to people who didn't read the description. I get the feeling from emails later. So, just emphasizing the importance of those things. They also said that if given an opportunity to learn more about authors, our audience agreed that they would most like to know the author's inside scoop on characters and storylines from their book. And that's something I sometimes do, often like in the last book in a series, I'll do some kind of author notes, and I've occasionally done like a Q&A and solicited questions from Facebook's readers to put in the back of the book. Do you guys do that? It seems like something I should maybe do more often because if people want it, why not provide it?
I have taken questions like that. I don't often include them in the book itself. It's always ancillary, like social media material or blog stuff. But people are very frequently interested. Especially there will be a couple of favorite characters that I really find that people want to know about, or like they'll want to know what the inspiration was for a setting or a storyline. I actually tried to set up for a character interview recently and didn't get a lot of responses because my Facebook page has been kind of dead. So the engagement, I'd have to basically boost the post so people would know that I'm asking.
I've got a section in all my newsletters where I say, if you have any questions for Andrea, put them here and see them answered in this place in a future email. And again, back before everything kind of fell apart, about once every month and a half, once every 2 months, in that section, I would answer like 3 to 5 questions. And then sometimes I'll do like Facebook Live videos, which I also upload on YouTube. And I'll also put those videos in that section in my email, just answering the random questions the weird questions that readers have. I don't know. You guys probably get really weird questions sometimes.
Right. I think this is specifically saying they want this stuff in the actual book, like at the end. And I've done this before. One thing I have to be careful with is like dated things that become dated though, because I remember answering questions, and I'd written like 5 books in a series that went on to have 8 and a spin-off novel and a spin-off series. So it's just realizing that you have to update this later or just accept that you published it 5 years ago and it's going to be out of date for anybody reading the book currently. Or, I think if I did start doing it again, I'll just make sure I'm not answering questions that might change as I continue on in the series. And then the last thing I picked out was they said over 30% of their readers read 6 to 10 books per month and spent up to $15 per month purchasing books. So that was just good to think about. 30% is a pretty good portion of people that are reading or buying several books a month. That's just their readership in word media. So who knows how indicative that is of the readership as a whole. But it is good to realize that people are still spending. That's a decent amount, especially if they're buying indie books. Not everybody's just in Kindle Unlimited, or there are people out there buying books. I've certainly seen this year. I've had actually a higher percentage of sale, or income coming from sales versus KU this year. That could just because I don't have the box sets aren't killing it right now. Retired a couple of those and published it wide. But all right, let's get into our major topic here. And just to list the stores, since I think I forgot one earlier that we're mostly going to be talking about is Apple Books, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, and Google Play. of course, anything we talk about applies to Amazon for the most part too, except we will talk at the end about specific stores. We have a few tips. And also, if you use a distributor to get into a lot of the sort of smaller stores that don't have uploading, we can't go direct with them. And that could be Smashwords, Drafted Digital, or Publish Driver, or the main distributors out there. So we have a long list that we all brainstormed and put together of sort of like what works to get sales in the other stores besides just Amazon. So we're going to kind of just read through it and pause a little bit here and there to discuss things. I started out, so I will be reading for a little bit before handing it over to Andrea and Joe. But the first thing that's really worked well for me, and we've talked about this before, but having a perma-free book one in a series and doing kind of inexpensive promos periodically for that book one. And these might be like free book C. If you can get BookBub, that's always great. That's a tough one to get. Or even boosting posts or social media stuff to your platform. I found that my social media followers, also known as my readers who happen to be on social media, are generally really enthusiastic about sharing and posts about free books. Like they may not be like, oh, I don't get 80 shares on a $5 new release, but if something's free and they want their friends to check it out too, I'll even see them like tagging like, hey, here's the series I told you about. And so it's easier, I should say, to get word of mouth on when you're doing free on something. And it's just, we'll talk a little bit more about how search works in some of those stores, but free is still very effective. On Google Play, Kobo, I think Barnes & Noble too. You usually have to do some promotions though. It's like just having it free is probably not as effective as it used to be. What do you guys think? I know Joe also has several free book ones, and I'm not sure if you do now, Andrea, or if you're mostly in KU.
I'm mostly in KU now just to simplify my life, but I do have one box set that is perma-free still, and it's on Mosaic Chronicles, which is historically not a good seller for me, but having that first 3 books free has led to the last 3 books doing really, really well, much better than they ever did when the books weren't free.
Yeah, I would say it's fair to say that most of my promotional effort it just is coming from the fact I've got 3 book ones free. And also, as mentioned in there, the promotion for free books is cheaper than for paid books. So that's the thing that I think a lot of people overlook is even on BookBub, a BookBub ad for a free book is way cheaper than for a paid book. So when you have your perma freeze, it also sort of opens up your opportunity to do more promotion just because the price tag is lower.
I will say it used to be way cheaper on BookBub for a free book, but a year or 2 ago, they kind of doubled the price. It was like 200 something in sci-fi fantasy, and it went at like, I think it's 500 something now, which is probably still less than the 99-cent ones. But yeah, that is true on some of the platforms. And I should say, I say perma-free book one, but it's not like you can just be free for a few months. You don't have to commit to it's always free. I have some that are always free that are kind of old series because they're also on places like Wattpad and Scribd that I put up back in the day, and it would be a pain to yank them down everywhere. But I also have some that I just make free for a time, so I can run a promo and then I put it back up to $2.99 or $4.99, just so that I can kind of price pulse. And I don't know. So you seem to get more traction when something's going from paid to free as far as the promos go. Another thing that you can do to get the sales on the other stores is run, especially BookBub, the pay-per-click ads allow you can basically put them, you can put like India, Amazon, you can put Apple, US, Kobo, Canada, you just put the link in and, it usually accepts it. Same with Facebook ads, you can tailor the link specifically to only for Canadian Facebook watchers, viewers, whatever they are, and the Kobo store. Or I've done more to Apple because it's pretty easy to target iOS people that are using Mac products, Apple products in order to do things. So you automatically know that they have a better shot of being Apple store fans. Although, as I've admitted before, I have all the Mac stuff and I still shop at the Amazon store. But what do you guys do any of this? And I think, Andrea, we talked offline and you thought it was actually more expensive to promote to the other stores. Was your experience, at least as far as Facebook?
Yeah, Facebook ads, BookBub ads have been cheaper to advertise for us to like other stores than on, but like Facebook ads for me. And just from what I've been hearing from other people, because they don't get seen as much, they've been more expensive to get clicks on. Like back when I used to, the box sets, when everybody was doing those running for USA Today. And I mean, that was the general consensus, was that it would be like $1.50 per click, but that people were more likely to buy when they saw the ads than Amazon people. But that's kind of true a lot of the cases. In a lot of the cases, other retailer buyers are more likely to buy when they see ads than Amazon buyers. They're also
Yeah,
more likely to read. Sorry, Joe.
it's true. Because they're not just hoarding the cheap stuff, as tends to happen. I just bought a game bundle that had 1,700 games in it, so I'm probably not going to play most of those. But yeah, I BookBub. I have often targeted other stuff, and I found it to be really effective and relatively cheap. Like BookBub is one of those where you really have to fine tune your image and your targeting. But once you do, you can have pretty good success everywhere for pretty low cost. I have never actually targeted a Facebook ad at anything but Amazon, because I still have not included Facebook ads as like an ongoing thing. It's usually a temporary promo thing. And my temporary promos are almost always targeted toward Amazon right now.
I would say I'm not sure I've noticed that I spend more per click doing stuff to other. I've done, like I said, Kobo Canada and Apple in the US, and I've done some UK stuff. Um, I don't know, it may just be, who knows, based on your genre. I find quite a variety just doing US based stuff to Amazon. Like it can be same book, different ad. This one wants 38 cents a click, this one's 12 cents a click. So it can be a challenge to, unless you do a ton of it, to really see, but that's something you can experiment with. Another thing you can do is share free bonuses related to, like using the same characters from your series. We've talked about doing like prequel novellas or short stories, and making them free. And not just, a lot of people go straight to, I'm going to put this on BookFunnel, and it's going to be, you have to sign up with an email address. But if you think about it, having your free stories in the stores where people are actually shopping, you're probably looking at thousands of downloads versus, 500 that maybe you get doing a newsletter promo group thing, and just making people give an email address for a short story. If you take away making them do anything, they might be more likely to try it. And that was like one of the first things I did, was having a short story that tied into my Emperor's Edge series. And, I got a pretty cool cover for it, considering at the time I was on quite the budget. And it worked really well to just, it was sort of a fun standalone adventure. And then at the end I said, hey, do you want to know how these two characters first met? Please check out book 1 in the Emperor's Edge series. And at that time the novel was $2.99 or something, and obviously the free short story was free. Is that something that you guys are doing? And I mentioned Wattpad too. There's all kinds of places you can share these things, but I do think having them in the actual bookstores for free is probably going to be where you're going to get the most readers and willing to go on and buy from that store.
I've used Wattpad extensively. I've had a lot of success there. Not recently, it's been a few years, but they featured me quite regularly. They did a huge launch party for me for one of my books. It was really awesome. And I still have readers who found me through that are very, very friendly, whatever the word. They know me, I know them, all that stuff. But I love that idea of putting like my short stories up for free. A lot of them I use in that exclusive box set, and then I use others as download bonuses. But I've got so many, and after you've been doing this for a while, you're going to just accumulate a whole bunch of stuff that people won't buy because it's not a main book or something. I love that idea, having them be perma-freeze.
I have had stuff that was similarly. I've had Wattpad releases that are still on Wattpad that aren't free anywhere but Wattpad, and that has, oddly enough, has not bit me yet. But I also, oddly, I have a short story that is an audiobook that is free. The audiobook publisher recommended I give that a try. I actually don't know how well that's doing, because I get very, it's traditionally published, so my statistics aren't real time on that. But it's clearly been effective, because they continue buying my books, so I'm not losing them money. And I'm probably going to be doing this later this year, probably in between the releases of the next 2 books. I have taken a lot of my short stories that are either outside of the main series. I have two anthologies of short stories, one of which are spin-offs and stuff from my big series, and the others are not related to my big series. I think they're probably both going to spend some time perma-free, just as sort of attract people in that way for this exactly purpose.
You would think that some of this stuff too would only be for diehard fans. Like I have this series that was 4 scenes of basically how the main character proposed to the main female character. And this was after like 7 books in the series, and I had it on my website, and somebody said, hey, can you put this in an ebook? So they could keep it, I was like, okay, I did. And I decided to go ahead and put it on Amazon just so everybody could find it that wanted it. And I actually had somebody email me and said they found that first, which is weird because it's this goofy, like the foul proposal, the foul proposal, FOWL, because there's ducks naturally in high fantasy. Duck proposals are big. But anyway, they actually found it and read that first. And I was like, this could not be entertaining to anybody who doesn't know these characters. But they're like, no, I went back and got the first book and read the whole series and really liked it. So you never know. The more stuff you have out there with like zero cost, people will try it. So another thing you can do on the other stores that actually you probably shouldn't do on Amazon right now is put together big bundles, like an entire series bundle or something that's above $9.99. And we say don't do it on Amazon because if you go above $9.99, you get dropped from 70% royalty back down to 35%. But on most of the other stores, they're fine giving you the 75%. Both Apple and Kobo for sure do that. I need to double check on Barnes & Noble. But I am about to do this for the first time. People have been doing it for years. I finally put together my whole Dragon Blood series. I think it's 9 novels. There's like a side novel and a side novella in there. And it's a good way to get everybody to read everything. Whereas, because sometimes those side novels and stuff, people might miss them because especially on Amazon, can't put it on the series page if it doesn't have a number. And some of the other stores don't really have series pages yet. And then you're stuck doing like, this was novella 5.5. But anyway, so I'm going to put it out, I think, for $24.99. I'm probably just going to put it on the stores to give you the 70% and just, sorry, Amazon just not going to get this because I don't want to make it the same price but only get 35% royalty. That I'd rather have them buy individual books. Is this something you guys have tried at all?
I have not yet. Once I get done with all of these book 6s, which are all at least ostensibly supposed to be the end of the series, or at least the end of the arc, that's 3 opportunities to do so. Particularly with the Book of Deacon, I could put together a monster for the Book of Deacon if I include all the spin-off stuff. So it's certainly on my list for maybes in the future.
I've done a bunch of different, I did the Mosaic Chronicles is 10 books, and I did that plus, okay, so the last half of the Mosaic Chronicles combines the 2 main characters from 2 series into one. And so what I did was I took all of those books, every single one of the books in that whole series, both series, and I put them in, and ended up being about 12 books because the Mosaic Chronicles was not finished at that point. And I put it all together. I charged like 25 something on other websites. Kobo ended up promoting it, and that was really, really great. And then a few months later, I put it back up again, but I put it on Amazon and I put it up for like $4.99. And that was one of my biggest months ever. People, even if they've bought like half those books, it's still a huge deal. It's still a huge bonus for them. And so they'll just go and buy the rest of them. But like Lindsay said, yeah, it's just the 70%. You have to charge a whole lot to make up for that drop from 70% to 35%. So, but it's really, really good. And the other stores love that kind of thing. If you've got a whole bunch of books and you discount them to like $15.99 or something like that, that's something that, especially Kobo, because I've worked with them extensively, that's something that they really love promoting for authors.
Right, I've definitely noticed that a lot of their promotions, they want something that's like discounted down and is under $5. And if your top book is only $5 to start with, they might not be that interested. But if they're going from $24.99, down to $4.99 or even $9.99, and I've definitely found that on those other stores, like I have some $9.99 box sets, and they sell really well. You would think, people don't want to spend that much, but if it's a bunch of books and you can't get them discounted otherwise. And it doesn't have to be a huge discount if they get a couple dollars off. And then you're getting somebody who might not have finished the series otherwise, or they might not have picked up all those side books. So I always think it's get that money up front. That's a good thing. Another thing you should make sure to do when you're wide is to link to all of the main stores. on your website and social medias and stuff. You can use something like Books to Read or another universal link if you don't want to like list 10 links. I say if it's on your website, you might as well just list them. In a mailing list situation, it may be different because the more links you have, you might be more likely to be considered spam or get flagged for something. But I have to remind this to myself now, because it was never a problem when I was just releasing everything wide. But when I started, having stuff exclusive to Amazon, of course, I can only really link to Amazon. Although you can set up a Books to Read link, and sometimes I do this, even if it's just the Amazon link, and later you can just go fill in that link, the other links for the stores on Books to Read, and then you don't have to go back and update your website and back a book and things like that. So I assume you guys do that. You're probably, if you're wide, you're linking to all the stores and not, Google Play kind of came on later. So I know I have old stuff out there that doesn't link to them. Before, I think 2015, I don't even think I wasn't selling books there. I couldn't get in.
Yeah, I link nowadays with universal book links, and a friend of mine is a web developer, and he put together this book thing for WordPress, which I would just fill in all the links and it would show up at the bottom. I don't use that so much now that I have universal links, but I've always been pretty careful to at least put my 3 biggest non-Amazon things in addition to Amazon, if not all of them.
Yeah, I use universal links a lot, Books to Read, but you will usually say click here for all retailers, including iTunes, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, etc. Yeah, and I'll talk quite a bit about that once we get into my part of the list.
One thing we should say is if you're doing something like Facebook ads, you might not want to do the universal link, because it's going to mean 2 clicks or possibly even 3, because like with Books to Read, it also pops up and asks, do you want to make this your preferred store in the future, if it's your first time using it. And the more clicks between the potential new reader and the sale, the less likely you're going to get that sale. When it's your readers already that they're going to buy your book no matter what, even if they have to go search for it on Amazon and find it themselves, I wouldn't worry about them having to do an extra click. All right, one more from me here in this big list is that if you're making your audiobooks wide, which in the last couple of years there's been more options for that, especially through like Findaway Voices. You don't have to be exclusive to Audible. I mean, you didn't have to be before, but there weren't too many other options. So you can start doing, if you're wide with some audiobooks, you can apply for Chirp deals. Right now, as we record this, these are still free through BookBub, and Kobo is also looking specifically for people to upload audiobooks direct to them. I actually just had an interview, and chatted with the ladies at Kobo that do the podcast over there, and they were saying, we were even looking for sci-fi and fantasy books, and this is they don't want it through Findaway Voices. They want it directly uploaded the same way you would do ebooks through KWL. And so I'm going to do that. I have 2 series in Findaway right now. I'm just going to go uncheck Kobo as it is, distribute to there, and upload it directly. I checked out the interface. It looks so much easier than, like, they had a beta or something about a year ago. And I kind of looked at it and I was like, I don't think I'm going to do it this way. So it looks much improved now. And if you get in, early 2020, 2021, they're probably going to be pretty easy to get those promos. And that can also help ebook sales if you're wide with ebooks too and have them together. All right, do you guys have any thoughts on that, or I'll hand it off to Andrea if not.
I'm going to say no and
thoughts.
hand it off to me.
Okay, go Andrea.
Okay, so my thoughts all are surrounding one central idea. And so I'm going to go through them and then give the whole point, and then ask Lindsay and Joe for their thoughts, if that's okay with you guys. Okay, so what I recommend people do is share publicly and vocally your support for other stores. So make it really obvious that your books are not available just on Amazon. So on your website, say, hey, iTunes, Barnes & Noble and Kobo, make sure that people know, and you can even use their logos. As far as I know, that's okay with them. I'm going to assume it's okay if you use their logos, but if it's not, then double check if you feel uncomfortable. Then when you do social media posts, tag their stores regularly, like hashtags or @, things like that. Focus on getting reviews on the other sites. So make sure your review team reviews in every place where your book is published. You can make that be a requirement to joining. What I say is they have to post in 2 different places, and preferably 3. And so what those places usually are Amazon and Goodreads. sorry, 4. BookBub now allows you to review, and then Kobo, because Kobo is very easy for people to set up accounts with. And then I tell readers about promotions that take place in other stores. So like if something happens on iTunes and I hear about it, even if I'm not participating in it, as I hit my mic, tell readers about that, Kobo, etc. And like I said, do this even if you're not involved in the promotion, and make sure you, again, tag them in your posts, the social media posts, and then tell readers the benefits about shopping on other retailers. So for example, Kobo, they have almost always a thing going on where new accounts get a $5 credit. And I've gotten a lot of my main readers to create Kobo accounts and shop there, as well as Amazon. And that's just beneficial for everyone. And then when you're wide, have a promotion every single month, not on the same book, following the above advice. So making sure that you're tagging them and you're telling your readers, you're directing, like iTunes readers, here's the books here, and Kobo readers, here's the books here, and all of that. And then, as we've mentioned before, wide distribution favors frequent and smaller events. Kindle Unlimited likes big ones that you're not allowed more than once a quarter anyway, so big ones once a quarter. And that's staying on the same book, as an FYI, with Kindle Unlimited. And then when you're wide, I usually like to cycle through my main books. And after you've been doing the above regularly, reach out to the individual locations. And I would suggest picking just one to focus on at a time for this part, and ask them about promotional opportunities. When you do that, let them know basically how you've been doing on their store and what you've been doing to push readers to those specific sites, and tell them you're open to working with them in the future. Just say, hey, even if you don't have any opportunities right now, I am open to working with you in the future. I am dedicated to making sure that readers in your retailer or in your store are happy. And what this usually does is, what I've noticed with my clients is, it's kind of, it takes a certain velocity of downloads and everything. You can't do this if you're only getting like 1 download a month on the other stores. You can, but it won't be as effective. But what it does is it opens the door for future merchandising options. And so, like Kobo has a promotions tab, but they also run promotions that are separate from that tab. And so if you are on their radar, if you're mentioning them in your and this is based on things that I've learned just by listening to merchandisers talking, and like the kinds of things that they notice from authors. They notice when authors are pushing their stores. And so if you're pushing their stores, you're most likely already going to be on their radar. So when you do approach them, and if you like listen around, pay attention, you'll hear people say, contact Kobo at this email address, contact, things like that. So, and then Draft to Digital and Smashwords, you can also reach out to them and say, hey, can you help me get promotions with these companies, or help me get my foot in the door with those companies? But the whole point about this is to make sure your business is not Amazon centered, because you can actually make really, really decent money on other retailers apart from Amazon. Amazon will probably always be your number one, but like Lindsay was just saying, she makes 6 figures on the other retailers. And Kobo was one of my biggest sales for my second biggest site for a very long time, because I babied them basically, and I got to know them, and I helped them out, and they helped me out, and things like that. So, and then also make sure you have access to the promotions tab on Kobo and submit your books frequently and regularly. And this again puts you in the front of their mind on Kobo. And but this is basically how I recommend people get merchandising options. You've got to be releasing regularly. You can be releasing once a month. You can be releasing once a month, guys, once a year, and you can still get merchandising options or opportunities at the other retailers, as long as you are doing what you can to just basically generate awareness for those stores. They want to help people who want to help them. If you're only linking to Amazon, or you're only linking to the USA, then you're not going to get as much attention. But there's just, I don't know. It's frustrating when people switch and they go wide and they do nothing. They do absolutely nothing except put their books up, and then they're like, well, my book never gained traction. Those stores do not work the way Amazon does. It's not like an algorithm where they're paying attention to which ones are getting the most downloads. They pay attention to it's people who are paying attention. So if you get attention, or get the attention of the people who are doing the promotions, then you'll have more luck. And have you guys, what are your comments and thoughts on that?
I
Who's
could
going
definitely.
first? Okay, Joe's
I'll
going
go.
first.
I could definitely say I absolutely agree with the mention that you're available on other places. There's a whole shtick that I'll do where I'll be like, oh, we're gonna do the sales mode. My ebooks are available wherever ebooks are sold. I'll do the whole shebang, and I'll go into it more specifically when I add my 2 points on this. But it's absolutely important that people know that you're wide, because there are a lot of opportunities available to wide people that you'll be passed over. Like if story bundle comes along, story bundle obviously can only be done with wide. And when people are curating story bundles and they don't know you're wide, you'll get passed over. So just even if you don't mention the individual stores, just letting the world know that you're not just available on Amazon has got a huge amount of value.
And I could be doing a better job of this, but I like that Andrea mentioned that, like instead of just doing a post that has all the links to all the stores and promoting that, if you happen to have something going on at Apple, let's say, like actually right now I got an opportunity to Find Away Voices to participate with a 99-cent audiobook, or I said, yes, I want to make it 99 cents when they said we're having a sale. So that gives me a great chance to just do Apple, a couple tweets, here's Apple's doing this June, I forget what they called it, great ebooks for less or something like that sale, and mine's in there too and that's the only place right now, it's 99 cents. So I think I tend to not be very proactive about it unless I'm invited to something, which that can be, the distributors can be helpful if you haven't yet managed to make a relationship with a rep at any of the stores. They can help you earlier on. They're often looking for folks, especially audiobooks right now, since so few people are wide with audiobooks. But that's like a great opportunity to just get on their radar, because you're tagging them. You're right, I'm at Apple Books on Twitter, and I don't know if that'll ever happen, but they might be more likely to be excited and retweet that or something, rather than if you're just like, I'm at all of these places for 99 cents right now, and you tag everybody. I don't know about you, but if I'm on Twitter and somebody tags me with 12 other people, I feel like it's spam. I'm like, don't do that. So just my thoughts on that is to work the distributors if you're not yet selling a ton where anybody's noticed you. And also if you get a chance to go to the conferences, everything's kind of online right now, but there's still a lot of these guys are having like Q&A with like Drafted Digital, or Kobo was at the last one I was at. So you may still get a chance to like connect and get on their email list if nothing else, and they'll send you an email when they're having, sort of like Andrea said, some promotions that are not necessarily something you can apply for just on the site. All right, that is my thoughts on that. If Andrea, do you have any more thoughts, or shall Joe continue on with his list?
I have 0 thoughts.
Oh my goodness.
Well, okay. I only have a few little add-ons here. But I'm going to double down on working directly through individual bookstores can give you a lot of opportunity. We're talking going, instead of distributor, if you go straight to Kobo or straight to Apple, there's often a lot more opportunities for you. And a lot of people like to do this. I've never done that except for Google Play, because as far as I know, Google Play is not included in any of the distributors. So that being said, and it's been said earlier, if you do use book distributors, they are your conduit, not just for distributing your books, but to contacting the individual marketplaces for this stuff. And with one glaring exception, which I'll say in a moment, every contact that I've had with an individual marketplace's promotions has been thanks to Smashwords putting me in contact with them. So yeah, your distributors, they have the email addresses of the people who make these marketing decisions, and they specifically curate lists of recommended books. So be in contact with them if you're doing that stuff. Also, if you follow the earlier advice and you end up with a contact within any of the individual stores, be aware of all of the promotional options that are available to you. Like, you may be thinking, well, put me on your list whenever you're going to do a price promo, let me know and I'll see if I want to be a part of it. But there's other options, and we'll talk about them in the Apple section. There's other options you might not be aware of in terms of, say, limited time exclusivity or early releases or samples. And I don't have this on my list, but I should add this too. If you get an international opportunity, lots of times that feeds back into I'll just give the specific example. I was chosen as a book of the month for Apple. It was an editorial decision back in 2012 by a representative of Apple in New Zealand and Australia, in that region. But that still got me the book of the month tag, and that still got me editorial review, and that shows up into the iBook store. So even if it seems like it's a small opportunity, it can feed back into the larger pool and really help you out. So don't necessarily turn things down that seem like they might be beneath you. Everything helps. So just keep in mind all of those opportunities.
Right, and like we were talking about, I think last time with David, it doesn't matter where the money comes from. You know, like it may be easier to get that money from some of these stores that don't have like AMS ads, Amazon ads set up for them yet, or they're just Apple. We'll talk about this in a minute, but you know, they don't have the ads yet on their store, so there's no distractions if you send readers directly to your book page on Apple. But let's go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the specific stores. And I want to give a big shout out to Ricardo at Readsy, because he's been sending out, I'm on his newsletter, and he's been kind of breaking down. He did one for the Google Play Store, Kobo, and Apple. And I'm cribbing from his notes basically and sharing some of the juicy bits, because I'm going to be honest, I don't spend a lot of time trying to figure out how the search engines work on the on the other stores. There's only so much time, you know, so it's great when somebody that likes to do that stuff and has that analytical mind shares their notes. So we're just going to do a little bit, let's do Google Play first. And I'm also going to link to some articles on Readsy, and actually he has his newsletters up online, so I'm going to link to those too in the show notes for the episode. So you guys should definitely check that out for more information. But with Google Play, it's a store unique to each reader, and I got this also from the Google reps I got to talk to at 20 Books last year. So they also reaffirmed this or confirmed it or affirmed it. It was firm, guys, really firm. The Google Play team says that nearly all Google Play Books merchandising is driven by an algorithm, and as a result, every reader sees a different personalized bookstore. So you may think when you go look for your books, they're like nowhere to be found because you're just not logged in. Because if you're not an Android person, you may not be using Google Play. But if somebody buys 3 of your books from Google Play and reads them to the end, and apparently they actually track that, then they're going to start seeing more of your books in their recommendations. So this is kind of true in a lot of the stores. The more you sell, the more you're going to sell to the readers that you find on those stores. There's also a focus on deals on Google Play with a section, a section for that when you log in. So price promos or free book ones can be featured and pushed. There's also a section that focuses on new arrivals. Quoting Ricardo here, if you look at the top of the page, one of the main navigation elements you'll see is new arrivals. This gives new releases a great deal of visibility on the store. From some quick research, it seems that new books feature on this page during their first 30 days, making this very similar to Amazon's hot new releases, except it gets extra visibility. And so now I'm kind of thinking, actually having read that I shouldn't, when I launch a series wide, my tendency is like, just put all the books out there once, because these guys have been waiting forever for the series that used to be exclusive to Amazon. But now I'm like, maybe I should trickle them all out, or do the first couple and then do one every 30 days. It's a little easier just to put them all out at once, but I'll keep that in mind for the next series that I take wide. And one more thing from Ricardo on the Google Play search algorithm. Based on my own experimental research, it looks like Google places much more importance on keyword matches in title/subtitle, categories, and blurb than Amazon. Inversely, it seems to place less importance on sales, which means that you can get your book ranking high for highly competitive searches, even if it's not selling super well yet. And I have to say, I think he may have talked about this at one of the conferences, and I promptly went into Google Play and put an epic fantasy adventure in the subtitle for that series, or a dragon fantasy adventure, urban fantasy, and possibly also in the blurb, threw it down at the bottom. This is the book 3 in an urban fantasy adventure, just to see it. I don't know. I feel like 3, 4, 5 years ago, I was hearing this really worked well. I'm not sure I could, I didn't see I've got a big catalog over there, 60 books or something. I can't say that I saw any immediate boost from that, but what do you guys think? Have you played around with Google Play? Is any of this stuff ring a bell or no bells?
I can tell you, particularly the new release thing, I was impressed, because I had the 3 urban fantasies that were exclusive. I had a long lapse in new releases on Google Play, and then I had this year's releases so far that all appeared there. And I had a bigger release bump on Google Play than most other places, and it lasted longer, and I did 0 promotion directly to Google Play. So I think that new release thing has got a lot of validity to it.
And I created my account before Google Play kind of went up and down in account creations. And it was also before they let you really have a lot of control over pricing. And so the only books I ever published there were box sets. And so I didn't have very much experience getting, I didn't even know they had any of these things. So
Right. And it might not hurt to go in and do like throw the keywords in to your title. It just sounded like from his email that even though Google, the search engine, is super sophisticated on search and is really hard to game, that Google Play Store may not be quite so sophisticated yet. And these guys have come on strong for me these last couple of years as far as earnings. Sometimes they're my number two. Barnes & Noble had that slot for a long time. And this is even, you guys know I tend to release new series now exclusive to Amazon. And so sometimes it will be a year between releasing anything on the other stores. And I'm still like through having free book ones and occasionally running promos on that stuff, I'm able to keep my earnings up on those stores maybe more consistently, I would say, than on Amazon. It seems like you really got to work it on Amazon or things start dropping off pretty quickly. So I think it's worth it. It's not necessarily a lot of effort to do some of the things we're talking about.
Question, do you know if they're even open for new accounts right now?
They should be. We mentioned it in an earlier show that they've kind of streamlined it. It's supposed to be a simpler process now to get accepted and get in there. And also that, and I don't want to take Joe's thing. Go ahead, Joe, because I was about to spoil your tidbits on Google Play.
Okie doke. I'll make them pretty quick. Google Play, at least in the past, has used a spreadsheet to do the schedule start and stop of promos. And even if that's not the case anymore, Google Play, I've always been impressed by how instantaneous price changes are. So that's just something to keep in mind. It's a lot more precise and a lot faster to do your price promos on Google Play than a lot of other places. So you can feel safer about fiddling with that stuff. And they've recently revised their back end. The pricing structure of the back end is way easier to do international prices differently, which leads into my second section, which is a relatively recent change has taken a little bit of the edge off of wholesale pricing. If you have been on Google Play, then you are aware that it has been kind of hard to price your books on Google Play because they do wholesale pricing, which means they can discount up to like 52%, as opposed to agency pricing where they sell for exactly what you charge, which meant that you had to price your books basically double on Google Play in order to avoid having Amazon price match down to whatever Google Play decided to sell your book for. That is no longer the case on certain storefronts. I think it's US, UK, and Australia are the three where they will now charge what you say. However, be careful because there's also value-added tax, which is either added on before or after, and you have to be aware of that because if you're doing a price promo on BookBub and you don't have the value-added tax thing figured correctly, it won't be the price they said it was. So you still have to keep your eyes on that stuff, but it's no longer price matchy. It's no longer going to be an Amazon threat for certain international Google Play stores if you set your price to exactly what it is everywhere else.
Have you played around with the promos on there? Because I think I ranted to you. Like I had a BookBub, I think earlier this year it was, and so I decided to actually do the price promo thing rather than going in and changing the price in the bookstore. And it did something. I can't remember if it took the book off sale or it just didn't end the promo. I feel like it was something more drastic than it didn't end the promo. I can't remember exactly, but right now, if you do it, I would definitely make a note to yourself to go check everything after it's supposed to come off the promo. Hopefully that was just some weird fluke that unluckily happened to me, but I'm a little wary of doing the promotions yet through their system.
I think I did it twice. Both times it worked okay, but it was a little nerve-wracking because you're sort of like putting your trust into a machine that you're not sure if you had a typo in your spreadsheet. So I have since mostly done all of my price changes manually and then manually checked that they went through because I am an Android user and it's very easy for me to do so.
All right, and the pricing now seems to be normal. Like as far as you used to have to go like, I'm going to sell it for $2 more on Google Play in anticipation that they're going to drop it $2 or something, and you'd end up with weird prices. But definitely worth playing with. I think I made 6,000 there last month, and I didn't do a whole lot. I released new books, so that of course helps. But it's been a good store for me considering I can't navigate it very well. Actually the back end, they're doing a lot of improvements though, and I think they're continuing and they care. So that's excellent. I think in the past it was sort of, you weren't sure if anybody was working the help desk or anything in there. And it's good that they're starting to come to the conferences and stuff too now. So Good to get in there. And let's talk a little bit about Kobo next. So something, again, I'm kind of leaning on Ricardo's emails, and I've got a link to, he's actually quoting a course that Mark Lefebvre put together for Reedsy, Kobo Hacks for Optimizing Sales. And again, I'll put the link in the show notes. It's a free course if you want to take it. But he just saying, remember that the US is not their biggest market by far, so don't like target Kobo in the US if you're running some Facebook ads. Some of the data is that the breakdown is 50.68% Canadian sales, 11% United Kingdom sales, 10.7% Australia, 9% United States. So they've got a few Kobo people. 4% France, 3% New Zealand, 2.99% rest of the world. So that's, you can actually go, if you want to be really granular and run sales to like New Zealand Kobo, that's totally an option, and you'll probably be the only one advertising for it. So like I said, it doesn't matter where the money comes from, and you never know, it takes a lot less to get into some ranking, sales ranking and charts in some of the smaller countries that people are not targeting so much with ads. Ricardo also says that when running Facebook ads for authors recently, I found that ads pointing to Kobo's Canadian store, targeting a Canadian audience, converted a lot better than US ads pointing to their Walmart store. And I guess we didn't mention that, but Kobo distributes to a lot of places too, including like FNAC in France and a few other ones, and Walmart in the US. I have not yet heard of anybody like really killing it with Walmart sales with ebooks. Maybe someday. But as we mentioned earlier too, Kobo is really looking to promote audio right now. They just had a KWL podcast on marketing your books on a global scale. I'll put the link to that too. I think it was episode 200, and quite a bit of good information in that show. Do you guys have any thoughts on Kobo?
I will again sort of double down on, they do much better internationally than a lot of other stores, and if you are the kind of person who has topics that that appeal internationally, then you're probably going to have a lot of luck focusing on Kobo for those. I will also say that Kobo, for a long time, they were very fond of doing book, and I'm sure they still do, book promotions that are within specific price ranges. Like, it wasn't just, a free book, so they're going to promo it, or a 99-cent book. They'd have books that cost less than $4.99 and books that cost less than $2.99. And they would often slice those up into subgenres. So because of the granularity of those promos, it was a lot easier to get into them because there were just fewer people who met any specific criteria. So yeah, that's where I would land on Kobo with my advice.
No, and something that my husband always likes to say, and this has already been mentioned, it doesn't matter where the money comes from. I mean, people get so fixated on, but I want to be selling in the US so I can get American dollars. It gets transferred or whatever the same to your bank account. So who cares if you're getting a lot of money in Canada instead of the US? I mean, readers are readers. Readers are readers are readers are readers. And money is money, and money is money. Anyway, but Kobo is my favorite place. They're I don't know, they're so reader or author centric, and they're a smaller company. I mean, they're owned by a huge company, but they are a small company, and so books are their whole purpose. It's not like Amazon where it's a side purpose. And even sometimes Barnes and Noble feels like they don't really care about readers or authors. But Kobo, like, they're open to you reaching out to them and in contacting them directly, and they almost always respond. I mean, when I was working with him regularly before I put most of my books in Kindle Unlimited, they're what are they called? They're the people that organize the promotions. It wasn't technically a merchandiser, but she actually transferred to a different position, and then the new person took on it. It took the new person a few weeks to get caught up, but they're always very receptive and open to being reached out to, because people focus so much on Amazon, and their whole goal is just to make readers and authors happy. And so I just love Kobo. I mean, I absolutely love Kobo.
All right, we'll be getting Kobo as a sponsor next month on the show notes. Just kidding, but I agree. They were kind of the first ones when Mark Lefebvre worked there to start reaching out to indies. I feel like you'll get reached out to at Amazon if you sell huge piles of books too, but Kobo didn't seem to need, you didn't need to sell as big of piles to get on their radar. And they all, because they do the podcast too, and they also go to a lot of the conferences. They're very aware of the authors who are publishing in the indie sphere and on their platform. All right, let's move on to some tips from Apple. Apple has rebranded itself to make it friendlier for authors. You no longer need a Mac. You can now use their online browser-based portal in combination with iTunes Connect, which is now also browser-based. I haven't checked it out yet because I do have a Mac, so I did download all the stuff to do the things, but I did find it kind of a hassle. And I actually put my last series through Drafted Digital to go into Apple, because I'm curious if I can maybe, as we were talking about, get some promo opportunities more. And I feel like it's a little bit, I'm all split up. I have stuff through Smashwords to Apple, I have stuff direct with Apple, and maybe one of the reasons I haven't gotten as much love from them is I'm like 3 different entities there, so they don't know actually make thousands of dollars a month from them. It's just because it's all broken up. But it's a store I'd like to make more headway with, so I'll be kind of paying attention to stuff here. But they also have a help page now for authors at authors.apple.com. And on it, it says they give 70% to all titles, regardless of price. And like we talked about before, there are no third-party ads. So if you advertise on your own and send them to your page, they're not going to be distracted by somebody else's book for sale on your book page. Also, no limitation on free books, and they say there's no file delivery fees. So if you have, illustrations or something and have larger books, that's something to be aware of on the other stores. Some of the features are that Apple Books has a tolerance for higher prices among their readers. I've heard people give the advice that you can charge more on Apple than the other stores, and I don't think I would personally feel bad like charging different prices depending on where people are. I try to be really fair, but this is another opportunity for the giant box set that you sell for $20 or $30. It's your complete series, and that's a nice chunk of money when you get a sale on that, and it's sounds like people are willing to do it there. I haven't gotten my statements yet from Apple or reports to see how my $9.99 box set was doing there. That was definitely what gave me a boost on Google Play last month. But they also say that, this is Ricardo saying this, they give a huge advantage to pre-order sales on the store. So this is maybe a good one where it's, when we talked about the pre-orders, if you can get them up way early, you have a chance for sales to be trickling in, especially if you have some readership there, so you're actually going to be getting sales consistently. Seems to give you a pretty good boost on release if you had a lot of pre-orders. And what's still effective here, and probably where most of my sales come from, since I haven't done a whole lot of promoting individually on Apple, is just having the free first in series. Do you guys want to talk about or discuss any of that? I have some more stuff to cover on Apple, but I'll pause if you have any thoughts there. No thoughts?
I don't have thoughts. I will say that we can just skip me when it comes to iTunes. You don't even have to ask me because I have zero experience with them.
All right, no thoughts. Joe's the one that rocks it on Apple, though. I don't know. All right, but let me continue on. Also, another store that does human curation. So you need to be selected by their merchandising team rather than trying to figure out how to work any algorithms. As I mentioned, I'm in audiobook promotion right now. It's just started, so I'm not sure if it's going to result in a whole bunch of sales or not. I'll definitely be watching that. This is, I think, the first one, maybe the second I've got into Find Away Voices on a book 1. And I've got 3 more audiobooks in that series, so I will see what the sell-through is like on those. Apple search mechanics. Ricardo found that keywords in the titled/description did help books come up, but sales, unlike Google Play, we mentioned sales and downloads might not matter as much. He said sales and downloads did seem to figure in with Apple. So you need to have keywords if it makes sense in the title and description and also has good sales. They don't have a sales ranking, so he's kind of guessing on sales based on like number of reviews there. But unlike in some other stores, price didn't really seem to figure in. A lot of free results came up when he was doing searches, so that may be why perma-free book 1s still do well on Apple. He actually had in his search Dragon Fantasy, and I was like, hey, there's my Dragon Blood series, and it came up, and it was free at the time, I think, and so there's proof. The free books will come up in searches if you've got some keywords in there. And in that case, I didn't have Dragon Fantasy in the book title. It was just Dragon Blood, but it was in the fantasy category, so they were able to figure out their search that that was a Dragon Fantasy book. And he's got a couple articles on his site, how to publish and sell on Apple Books in 2020, and then again a couple of emails, and I'll, as I said, link to those in the show notes. All right, Joe, any final thoughts on Apple before we wrap? Or we actually have some listener questions to answer too.
Just a couple. Yeah, like we talk about individual curation again. I mentioned it earlier, but I was selected as a book of the month, and that was I didn't even pursue it. It was just somebody within Apple liked the steampunk genre and read my book, and they thought it was good enough to give a heads up. So there are people making these decisions, and the specific I haven't done one since maybe last year. Well, certainly not. Might have been the previous year, but Apple has some promotional activities options that are, as far as I can tell, unique. Because when you actually get a promo with them, it's noticeable. Um, what I did with the most recent steampunk release was I told them, hey, listen, this is coming out. You chose the first book in this series as an editorial book of the month a while ago. What can we do? And they said, well, if you give it to us 2 weeks early, then we'll give you a carousel ad. And basically, at the top of iBooks, they have a rotating thing of like just notable books, and they gave me a big old banner that like would center right up there, and it was there for the full 2 weeks that I had it released early on theirs. They also have promos where if you have your book up for pre-order and it has got the full finished text available, then they'll have a promo where they make the sneak peek available for people, and so you get some promo love just from having a finished book that's on pre-order. There's all sorts of stuff like that. And I'll also add, Apple are sticklers for their brand being represented correctly. So if you are going to be working with Apple, they're going to probably give you, I mean, if it's a real deal, again, when I was the book of the month, they gave me like a media pack and like, here's what logo to use. Here's the specific terms that you want to use. Here's the position on the cover that you want to put it when you advertise it. It needs to be this far from this margin, this far from this margin. Like, you score major brownie points with them if you follow their branding correctly. So that's a thing to keep in mind, I guess, overall, but certainly with Apple, they like it when you follow their rules.
Even though they occasionally change the name of their store.
I don't know exactly what they call their store right now.
I got also, I didn't get anything that extensive, but for the audiobook promo, I got like, here's 3 links for this, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and it was the same. And at Apple Books was what they were wanting it to be tagged as, and they gave me the link, and I did it, but the link went to the promo in general, and so I did it once everywhere, and any subsequent links I do will go to my book that's in sale in the Apple store. But I will still happily say Apple Books, so that seems to be what it is right now. All right, so Ricardo hadn't done one for Barnes & Noble yet at the time we're recording this, so I don't have any good notes on them. I will just say that I have found that the free books do continue to be downloaded there for me, the book ones. And occasionally I have a box set that's free, and it's just, it's easy to see in the reports how many free you're getting downloaded, and whether I'm doing promos or not, I consistently get free downloads, and it seems to keep the sales from, I'll get, of course, a big boost when I put out new books, but it's, I don't really fall off too far on Barnes & Noble. So it seems like when you do promos, I don't know, it just seems to stick for maybe a little while longer than Amazon. I don't think they have that, like, you don't get necessarily pushed down as quickly after a big boost in sales. So maybe there's a little bit more of a long tail there. Have you guys, I don't know if you've run any Barnes & Noble stuff, have you found that to be true?
It's been a while since I had like a big hit that included Barnes & Noble. I have noticed that Barnes & Noble, like the long tail is longer. But I also noticed, at least in my case, that getting noticed has been harder recently. Like overall, Barnes & Noble has slipped significantly for me as an earner, and Apple and Google Play have sort of eclipsed it.
I would agree with that. Back when I was mostly wide, Barnes & Noble, it used to be my number 2, and then it just slowly, Kobo took over, and then iTunes took over, and I couldn't get into my count half the time. I don't know what happened there. And then they kept changing things around, and, it was not fun. I wish they would do something about it all, though.
I feel like they are, I will say, because I got reached out to the first time a couple years ago from Barnes & Noble, and this may be like I put my email on an address like RWA. They had a list, they were there, and they had like, sign up if you want to be invited to promos, and I did that like 5 years ago. And so I've actually gotten, I have a person I can email there, and they sent me a Christmas card with money to spend in the Nook store. I don't have a Nook, so I have to get physical books. But so they're there. I think they are, they have people trying to work on things. They have, despite predictions of their demise, they have not demised yet. That's possibly not a word. But so I wouldn't give up on them necessarily. I do find, like I said, that the free book ones are still working there, especially if you can get some promos and get some decent numbers of downloads for those free books. All right, I think that is all we have on that topic. We have 3 listener questions to wrap up the show. Look at this, the show has gone for an hour. How shocking that we never managed to go under an hour. So Joe, I think, did you want to read this one? It's in red text, so I think it's for you.
Sure. This is from, I'm going to say, Vanya. This is more of a craft question, but with all of you being so prolific, I wonder how you keep your plots and tropes fresh. And if you think about writing to market when you plan a new project, or do you just write what you want? Or a little of both? Thanks. And I'll say that of the things about writing longer series, one of the things is that you're almost required to keep it fresh, because if you're doing it right, you're carrying your characters along and they're growing and changing. And therefore, even if you put them in the same situations, they're going to react differently. It gets a little bit trickier because you're dragging around all of that canon. But generally speaking, if your characters are changing, then their experiences are going to be fresh. But also it helps if you just have a lot of inspiration coming in. I don't read nearly as much as I should, but I still regularly consume movies, TV, music, video games, anything to fill my head with fresh stuff. And seldom do I encounter any form of media that doesn't give me some sort of an idea. Either I really like the way they did that, maybe I can do a version of that, or I really don't like the way they did that. I'm going to do that correctly when I do it. Both of them work just fine. And I've thought about writing to market, and I've tried to write to market a little bit in the past. I failed to hit the target both times. Once it was successful, even though it was a weak match for the market. My steampunk is by many not considered to be steampunk because it misses a couple of very crucial tropes, like it's not in Victorian England. It's a secondary world thing, but it was successful. It's still there have been times when it was my #1 earner. On the other hand, I tried the urban fantasy, which I thought I was writing to market, and I didn't write it to market, and it didn't succeed. So I've been on both sides of it.
And your Pizza Dragon was written to market, right?
Hey, I definitely captured the entire Pizza Dragon market.
Awesome. Okay, so as for me, the last bit of that was, do you if you think about writing to market when you plan a new project, you just write what you want, or a little of both? For me, it's a little of both. I try to stay as close to tropes as possible, but I always follow my muse and what excites me. And I think that's going to be the case for pretty much all authors. Some authors are just really lucky that what excites them is exactly what excites readers, but that's not usually the case for me. All of my stories have a creepy Lovecraftian twist that usually takes readers off guard. This can be good and bad. Good because those who are okay with it, they like that different, and it makes them read pretty much everything I write, because I kind of tie that throughout all of my books. But it's also bad because some readers only want what they are expecting, and if you don't deliver, then it's disappointing to them. But the good thing about the way I do it is my readers are very passionate, and I have been successful, and so it's not a huge deal for me. As to keeping things fresh, so like I was saying about Lovecraft, I absolutely love H.P. Lovecraft's books and stuff by his contemporaries, like Archon. Oh, what's his last name? Geez, I can't remember right now. But M.R. James is another one. So their plot lines and their storylines, they're just really, really fresh. And I make sure that readers know that I'm borrowing from them. And so, like I'll say, this story's based on this book is based on a story by Lovecraft. And how it works is Lovecraft and M.R. James, they'll introduce these really, really cool ideas and scenes and these thoughts and all of these situations and everything. And they don't flesh it out, and they don't show where it goes, and they don't give a resolution. They just introduce this idea like, hey, wouldn't this be cool if this happened? But then they don't do anything with it. And so I take those and I totally adopt them and make them mine and fully flesh them out. And of course I give credit. But so my suggestion, and the reason I do this is because their stories are all in the public domain. And there is so much amazing material in the public domain that's written by these early like horror writers or early romance writers. And the horror back then was very psychological. It wasn't super gory, but it was very complex thought wise. And so you can get so much good ideas, so many good ideas from that. So that's my suggestion. Just read old stuff, things in the public domain, especially for ideas. I mean, go and read all of the Robinson Crusoe and things like that, all of those old stories that we loved as kids. If you can do that, you can read them, you can watch, and then watching old movies and things like that. And documentaries, just basically refilling your well and introducing yourself to ideas and concepts that aren't common around us. Like H.P. Lovecraft, people know who he is, but people don't generally read him anymore except a very specific subset. But if you read and if you decide to read them, skip the first couple of paragraphs because they're usually about 30,000 words long, just the paragraphs themselves, and they're just very dense. What I'll usually do is I'll actually read the synopsis on Wikipedia first, and then I'll read the story if it interests me. But yeah, so watch old movies, watch documentaries, read old stuff, and if you're constantly refilling your well, then you're not going to feel like things aren't fresh. And I don't know, like I've got so many ideas for books, and I know once you start writing, the ideas just don't stop coming. And I don't know, I'm pretty sure Lindsay and Joe feel the same way. They probably have tons more ideas of books and series to write, and those ideas are fresh when they start on them. And so I think that if you're doing things, if you're not burning out on writing and on life in general, then things are just going to stay fresh to you.
We should remind folks that we are not the how to write to market people, because I was going to say, if you want to write to market, you should probably just be reading the stuff that's selling right now in your genre. But I'm kind of the same way. To some extent, genre hopping helps me because you're going to tell different types of stories depending on the genre to some extent. But I fully admit to having a horrible memory, and I've accidentally copied myself before. I had my Dragon Blood series, book 4. They were like coming up on this tentacle monster, and my readers were like, "You did a tentacle monster in the Emperor's Edge. Are you going to do another Kraken kind of thing?" I was like, "Fine, it's going to be a sentient plant now with arm tentacle things." But horrible memory, so I can accidentally copy myself for sure. But as far as being inspired for fresh plot ideas, I listen to a lot of nonfiction podcasts, interviews, nonfiction books. I find that if you want to be a little bit different, we're not necessarily to market, but fresher, it's great to bring in like your outside interests. I've brought like real estate into fantasy and science fiction. So, why wouldn't you have a princess who's a real estate developer? I mean, on a space station, it just makes sense. So that's I feel like nonfiction, just and history too, is super inspiring and will give you ideas. It is a little, I actually don't read very much within the genre that I'm writing in while I'm writing it. Sometimes when I'm writing the sci-fi, I'll read fantasy. When I'm writing fantasy, I'll read sci-fi. But I don't know that you're going to necessarily copy other people, but it's hard to come up with new ideas if you're just kind of exposing yourself to the same types of stories all the time. But as far as like repeating your own favorite things too, to some extent, realize that they probably are things, like tropes and stuff, you do them because they excite you. And it's probably okay. Like one of my common tropes is kind of having a romance that develops over the course of the series. I guess you'd call it enemies to lovers if you were doing a specific romance novel. My guys, it takes 7 books, but and I find that when I don't do that, I'm kind of less excited about the stories when there's not kind of a core romance at the middle, and they seem to creep in anyway, even if I have no intention of having them at the beginning. But when if I stray off to something different, super different from that, I find I'm kind of less excited. And I've actually had that experience as a reader when I really like a series by an author, and then I try something else by the author, and it's too different, and I just really can't get into it. So that's something to keep in mind too. If you've developed a readership that expects certain things, and that's what they really love, if you go too far away from that, you may find that they won't follow you as readily, and that series might not do as well. So it's okay, of course, to do other things, but if you have some certain tropes like the romance or something that people really enjoy, you might not want to ditch it just because you feel I've done too many romances in my author career. As far as writing to market, as I said, I can't do it. I'm very bad at it. The more I try to do something more commercial, the less well it does with my readers and in sales. So I've just kind of given up on that, So I do keep in mind, I will pick something that seems more commercial, like if I have 2 equal ideas that I'm equally excited about, and one I know in the past, I've done better with epic fantasy than I have with urban fantasy or space opera, and I'm equally excited, I might pick the more commercial thing. But mostly I'm just trying to figure out how to market after I've written the story. And I am done. Go ahead, Andrea, and read the next one.
Okay. Let's see. Scott, that's where we are, right? Yep. Okay. Scott says, if you have a standalone novel in your backlist, do you still or occasionally run ads directing traffic to it? Or does it just get what it can from the halo effect of your readers seeking out your other works? Similarly, are there books or series in your backlist you don't feel warrant ad spend or other regular promotion? Is it a case of only pushing your best earning series? Okay, so my answer to that is yes to the last question. Occasionally I'll send an ad or a promotion to something that doesn't sell well, but there's usually a reason it doesn't sell well. So it's like it's in a sad or a tired market, a market that just doesn't do very well anymore, or I miss the tropes like 100%, or it's a standalone where a series would have sold better and vice versa. And this is something that I tell my clients, tell other authors, it's noble to try to get things to sell well that don't. But when it comes down to it, money spends easier on things that sell well. I mean, that kind of sounds like chicken before the egg or whatever, but if it's going to sell easily and sell well, then it's just better to spend the money on something that you're going to get a better ROI on. Yeah, it just goes farther. I generally ignore my backlist that historically hasn't sold well. I make them really well priced, free or 99 cents if I can. I usually, like right now, they're all 99 cents. And then I make sure that they're at least listed somewhere on on my website or maybe in an email somewhere, just so that readers can find them. Because I do have readers, the ones that will read every single thing I read, I write, they'll go and download even the little random things out there that has only sold like 10 copies. It's just not worth the time and the effort to get them to sell. And so like I said, I usually ignore the stuff that just doesn't sell very well because it's just not a good ROI. It's that whole 80-20 rule, don't do 80% of your time on stuff that only sells 20%.
As for me, I've been really bad about effectively marketing my backlist, and I've got a pretty substantial backlist at this point. That said, I still promo some of my older stuff on occasion. Obviously, book one of my 3 main series will get a lot of promotion, but also if I can work on them, I'll often try a new promo method on one of my standalones. Like if I've never run a BookBub ad before, the first BookBub ad I ever ran was on the Pizza Dragon story because it has no history, and I don't. So it's safe. If I really screw it up, it's not going to hurt anything. And heck, if I succeed, then I get some sales. So I'll do that a lot. Generally speaking, though, I hit my best sellers most often. And I will also say that if you have got a long enough career and have been selling books long enough, you will get emails from the people who really, really love your standalones. And sometimes it's useful just to mention that, like, I got an email from somebody who was really happy that I wrote that Pizza Dragon story. Let me mention that again. And then, whoa, some people bought the Pizza Dragon story because they didn't know you wrote it. So every now and then, just mention some of your backlist because if it sold any books at all, it's probably got some fans, and they'll just be happy to hear that you mentioned it.
I, of course, promote the book ones in the long series often because that makes sense. There's a lot of books for people to buy. I do not spend money advertising like standalones. I've got a few things out there that don't really tie into a series at all. They're just kind of hanging out there. So it's the way that, advertising just costs so much right now that it's not really worth it unless it's going to lead into something else. I mean, I think I was going to do one I've got like Cyborg Legacy, which is this middle book after my Fallen Empire series. And I was going to apply for a BookBub, and it was like $700 and some for a sci-fi 99 center. And I was just like, this doesn't lead into anything. Maybe I'll make the money back, but I'm not sure. So I decided not to do it on that one. But what I will do is I'll occasionally run price drops and just promote it to my own list. Be like, hey, here's Fractured Stars. It's standing by itself doing nothing, but there's a free novella to go with it. So check that out. The only exceptions that I have a couple early things. I have my Goblin Brothers middle grade short stories. I never mentioned that. I think they sell about 10 copies a month at 99 cents. It's just so far, from what I'm doing. Same, I've got a contemporary. It was supposed to be a romance. It's kind of a mystery romance thing. Obviously I had no idea about the market or how to do a cover for that book. And I don't think I ever mentioned that one. It's not even in my fantasy sci-fi umbrella. So, but standalone books that are sci-fi and fantasy, yeah, I'll do mention them, drop the price, and let people know about them. Like Joe said, once you get a pretty big backlist, it can be hard unless somebody's an obsessive fan, not obsessive in a bad way, but like a really dedicated fan that's looking all the way through your list of novels to make sure they didn't miss anything. A lot of people that just jumped on board for a series might not necessarily know about that one, but they might like it, and it doesn't cost anything to mention it to your email list. So why not do so? All right, last question coming up here from Andy. A craft question, if you're taking those. Certainly we will. I'm new to series writing. First book is finished and second is outlined. My question is, are there any rules of thumb regarding what needs to be retold or reestablished from book to book? I'm struggling with how deep to go. For instance, should you write your second book with enough info to be easily read by people who have not read the first? I think Andy
And
was up.
that's me. Sorry, I had to find my computer. It got lost somehow. Just kidding. Okay, my mute button. Okay, so I don't ever cater to people who haven't read the first book, but that's because of the style of series I write. They're not possible to read out of order. And I know there are some series out there that have like an overarching thought or feeling or whatever that develops through the whole series. So like Mercy Thompson, for example, you can read her books out of order, but there are overarching ideas that start in the beginning and go all the way throughout the whole series. And my books are not like that. My books are going to be, my books are, if you start with book 3, you're going to be very confused. I'll do a very, very, very brief overview of what happened. But you're basically going to be lost. And one thing to note is that so other, like some books can be read out of order in other people's series. Those need to be treated like a brand new book if that is your series or your book. Traditionally published books usually cater each book to a new readers. And like, for example, Harry Potter. How many of you guys were so sick of reading about the boy who lived under the cupboard and had a lightning-shaped scar on his forehead? Every single book introduced him over. And I was like, dude, we know who Harry Potter is. Okay. You don't have to introduce him all the time. And they did that all the way until like book 6 or something. It just went on forever and everybody knew who Harry Potter was. Anyway, what I generally do is I see things throughout the first couple of chapters, gentle reminders of plots in the previous books and who the characters are. I never reintroduce the main character, just the side ones. And I have gotten better at this in earlier series. I almost never told who someone was or what their role was in previous books because it drove me nuts when authors did that, because as a reader, I would remember who those characters were. But I've had readers that be like, hey, now who's this person again? And so I'm like, ugh, you're right. I need to be doing that. And just gentle reminders. And you don't want it to be a whole lot because it takes away from the pace of the later books in the series, and later books in the series shouldn't have as much setup as the first book does. And anyway, so yeah, it's not the best idea to just expect readers to remember. Even devoted readers like a reminder. Even if they remember, it still gives them a little bit of a warm fuzzy to get a reminder of earlier plots or earlier characters. Anyway.
On this, I've gone both light and heavy with the reestablishing info. A couple of my books were released as serials, and so you were expected to have been reading along, but also you were expected to have literally gone an entire month since the last chapter. So I would often reestablish, like, here's what we're going to be talking about in this one, just so you'd remember what the heck I was talking about. And when those got converted over into actual novel releases with those reminder is still intact, it was pretty glaring and it felt weird. So often I will only reintroduce, basically, I will reintroduce a setting with a paragraph sometimes, the first time it comes up again after a while. And any other thing, the first time I mention them, there might be one sentence to just gently reassess. And it's not like I'm not going to fully re-describe a character. We don't need to know exactly how tall this person is or what color their hair is. Just sort of like literally, if it's a fantasy story, you might just put that character's title and it will tell you enough of what they were doing before. Maybe throw a line of dialogue to reference the last time they showed up, just as another character. Hey, where have you, like, weren't you in such and such a place before? You can do it in a very natural and easy way. But yeah, I agree. You shouldn't be putting enough information in a book that it makes the previous book unnecessary, because most of the people reading your later books will have read your earlier books and it will annoy them. And if they are reading this book first, it's going to basically remove the need for them to read the earlier book, or at least ruin the earlier book for them. Like, all things considered, I don't think there's a lot of upsides to doing a really heavy reintroduction of plot points.
We should point out too that if you grew up reading books like this, it was super common back in the days before internet bookstores, when you would walk into a bookstore and book 4 would be the only thing on the shelf from the series. And the publishers knew that it wasn't always the whole series was available. And unless you were going to special order and wait 3 weeks for the book to come in from Walden Books or whatever you shopped at, you probably would just have to start the series with what was there if you were interested. So that's why you used to see a lot more of that, where they kind of had to sum up what happened in the previous books. They had to kind of assume that possibly the reader wasn't able to get the earlier books. Same thing with television. You know, remember the original Star Trek? They never even alluded to stuff that happened in previous episodes most of the time, because there were no VCRs back then. It's just you either saw it or you didn't. So we're past that now. If somebody's going to read your series, they're going to have all the ebooks on their device. So if they forget something, they can flip back and look and search for that character's name in the previous book. So that's kind of what I assume that people will do. And so I do very lightly, especially if it's a complicated series. Like for me, my Star Kingdom series that I'm about to finish up is pretty involved. It's very much one story arc, one big arc from book 1 to book 8. So I will remind them, like, oh yes, this Valorian moon, the AI planet, the moon that is ruled by the AIs that I haven't mentioned since book 3. Like, I need to mention that at the beginning of book 8 because it's going to be a plot point in this one. So a little bit here and there is definitely good to help jog the reader's memory, but you shouldn't assume that they didn't read the earlier books and they have no clue, because that's on them if they didn't read the earlier books. They're all available. Everything's online now. So that is just how it is in this world. All right, guys, we've been talking for a long time. Should we wrap it up?
I think
We
so.
can keep going. I've got tons of energy.
No, it's time for lunch or something. I don't know. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Hopefully this show was helpful for you. And thank you to Joshua Pearson for producing it. You can find the show notes, and we'll have a lot of links in this one to all the articles I mentioned, or leave a comment or question at sixfigureauthors.com with the number 6. And just a reminder, we do have the Facebook group also with, if you search for Six Figure Authors, it'll come up and you have to answer the question about the beard to get into the group. And we will be happy to have you, and you can ask questions there or just hang out. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So long, everybody.